Good old Grandpa Marcus Aurelius, like his namesake, was a deep thinker. He loved technology, but was a great student of the human animal. He knew their herding instincts, their fear of standing out or disagreeing with the group. He knew their deep, anxious desire to be liked often outweighed their willingness to say or do the right thing. He knew how quickly and spontaneously their violent hierarchies could be built and how dangerous they were. He knew that people would tolerate the most horrific acts rather than have a confrontation with a so-called authority or even a peer. And he knew that greater technology often brought out the worst sociopaths, thinking only of amplifying their power. If not directly, then through intimidation of the developers. He thought to himself, why should the tyrants be the only social engineers? Why should there be social engineers at all? This was a once-in-a-millennium chance to flip the great game on its head. After all, he had 5,000 years of history to work with. He figured one can learn from bad examples as well as good. Of course, this would be a road fraught with monumental moral danger. The foundational elements of any new society would need to be as solid as possible. The key element in such a society must be the ability to choose for oneself. So he set about cultivating some founding mothers and fathers who believed as he did, not in everything, but in some vital areas. The astronomers and exobiologists had, by Marcus' time, made a great deal of progress in their exoplanetary surveys. This was the starting point of exploration for him and his small crew. There were plenty of candidates to choose from in the right temperature range for liquid water, with apparent atmospheres and indicated biological activity. There were hundreds, actually, within a reasonable range in their list of possible new homes. Closest to Earth were checked out one by one. This took quite a bit of time at first until more ships, crews, and equipment were assembled. There were many fantastic prospects, but it was decided to stick with those that were closest cousins to Earth in gravity, temperature, pressure, atmosphere, and general types of life forms. Hopefully edible and non-toxic. At the very least, the possibility of Earth agriculture substitutions should be there, i.e. the soil and pests would not destroy them. As it turned out, Earth-like DNA, proteins, and sugars were not uncommon, so it was not terribly difficult to transplant bits of DNA from one to another for the best adaptability. Finally, the colonists settled on a planet they named Magellan. The environment was friendly, and the soil could grow almost any Earth variety. As it turned out, Magellan's pests preferred not to eat them, and the Earth plants could not cross-pollinate with those of the planet. The gravity on Magellan was about 1.4 times that of Earth, so it took some time for colonists to work their muscles up to speed. The older-style exoskeletons were, for the most part, helpful in getting people moving around. Once people were in shape, however, they could handle themselves pretty well, especially back in the Sol system, where a hustler could make some real money. With the increased gravity, the weather there was much less erratic than on Earth. With each trip, the colonists brought satellites and other equipment with them to set up their communications, weather forecasting, and prospecting needs. For the growing villages on the surface, basic tooling and machinery were transplanted in order to bring them up to self-sufficiency at a greater pace. Very few selected to be a new system colonists ever complained of being without the niceties of Earth. These were adventurers who loved the fact that they could build new lives as they saw fit, without the suffocating petty encumbrances of society. Many of the colonists worked for larger entities, but almost all of them had their own enterprise going on the side. There was just too much to do. Those who, for whatever reason, felt they were not going to make it on Magellan would be sent back to Earth or Mars. They had to sign documents stating they would never reveal where they had been or with whom they associated. There were a few who did not abide by their agreements, but they did not get very far with respect to credibility. There were humans at home hiding advanced technologies, but the governments these people believed in were the ones hiding them. The new system definitely benefited from their secrecy and downplaying of sightings. Captain McDonough's latest stunt may have stretched the envelope more than necessary, Trevor thought. Megan had just forwarded her report of the whole incident, including who the intruder's employer might be. He had mixed feelings because the information was valuable, even if the methods were troublesome. He couldn't encourage that sort of behavior for the future. But so much for the heads up. 30 minutes later, Megan alerted him to the news viewer where he saw his old friend Lavoisier giving a press conference. Not a lot of news came out of French Polynesia, so this caught people's attention. The president was enlightening the press on the analysis of that now famous video. It seems their forensics lab, or actually Lavoisier, felt they had a pretty good match for the man outside the hyperliner. He had been identified as one Lucas Diamandis, a resident of French Polynesia, and Taha'a specifically. Lucas, it turned out, was also an employee of Van Leeuwan Corporation. The president let their forensics man go on a while about compensation techniques and Fourier analysis, etc., before he once again took control of the microphone. Inquiries had to be made of his neighbors, and no one had seen him. Calls put into VLC indicate that Monsieur Diamandis has not reported to work for several days, the president said. Of course, an investigation into this matter has already begun. We cannot have our citizens disappearing like this. Our air and sea rescue assets are being deployed as I speak here. Great. Just great. This is all I need, shouted Trevor. Megan, could you come in here, please? Megan came promptly. He called for her when he knew he needed to calm down, and it nearly always did the trick. I scanned Kimberly's report, Megan. Do we still have this Lucas in custody? You could say that, Mr. Van Leeuwan, she replied. They have him occupying a break room on board the Faraday. He's being treated well, for the moment anyway. Trevor thought there must be a way to end this before it even starts. He asked who among them with top security clearance was in the plant right now. They needed one or two reliable people to see this thing through. Megan narrowed it down to a few names. Okay, of these people, which ones could we place in a company boat where it wouldn't look that out of place with their normal duties? Any security guys? Megan replied, Yes, we do, sir. It looks like Chief Hannah Wharton and one of her deputies are both on duty. Shall I call them in? Yes, please. We will need to move fast on this one. Get me Captain McDonough on the comms, thank you. Megan went back to her office to get things rolling. In a few minutes, she indicated that Captain McDonough was ready for him. She looked nervous, and he did his best to look stern. He paused for about 10 seconds for effect and could see her squirm a bit. Okay, Kimberly, you know what you did was over the line. Yes, sir, she said. Trevor continued, but we don't have time for all of that right now. We need to work together to protect our operations from prying eyes. By now, you know there are search parties being organized by President Lavoisier and his minions. Here's what I want you to do. You know the Tupai Atoll? Good. Take up a position near there and out of sight as usual. Now, do you have any life vests aboard the Faraday? This should be standard issue. Great. You two need to outfit your boy Lucas, or whatever his name is, for a day out on the water. That means life vest, sunglasses, fanny pack, that sort of thing. Whatever you could scrounge up. We are going to send our boy sailboarding out. Kimberly and Justin didn't know quite what to make of it, but they followed orders. They were in enough trouble already. Aye, aye, sir. Over and out, Kimberly said, and signed off.